Hi, I'm Catherine Llewellyn, the host of the podcast. You can find out all about Truth and Transcendence on truthandtranscendence.com. And you can find out all about me on beingspace.world, where you will find my online coaching offering, as well as my UK-based workshops. The Freedom of Spirit workshop for liberation and empowerment, the Pellower Radical Shift in Consciousness workshop for spiritual expansion, and transformational coaching for exploring the mind-body-spirit connection on the expansive path. You can also support the podcast by actually making a donation. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. Today, I'm delighted to welcome special guest David Gilbert, who's here today to talk about a number of things, but we're going to start off by talking about spiritual alchemy, which David has a very particular connection to. He is an executive coach at Novus Global, an author, and a men's work facilitator. With a college degree in design thinking and a background in business and peak performance, David has helped executives, entrepreneurs, and high achievers break through unseen barriers, redefine their vision, and create extraordinary results, not just in their careers, but in every aspect of life. And David is the author of The Alchemical Journey, a book that reveals the hidden path to true self-mastery. And if you're watching, you can see The Alchemical Journey on the shelf behind me. It's a lovely, lovely book. I read it over the last week, and it's just beautifully written, beautifully illustrated. It's not very big, so you can read it quite quickly, but it's full of depth, and it's just a very charming story tale way of going through this lovely information. And David is also co-author of Peak Performance Mindset Tools for Business. And you can actually find David at goldenlife.com. It is also a beautiful website address. So David, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm grateful to be here.
Excellent. So spiritual alchemy, that's a very interesting expression. Would you like to kick off by letting us know, if you cast your mind back, when did you first kind of connect into this notion of spiritual alchemy?
It was something that wasn't part of my conscious path for a long time. Now, there was a moment where it really clicked, and it was pretty simple. It was when I bought The Idiot's Guide to Alchemy. And reading through that, and it happened to be in my office, and at the time I had a little couch in here, and I was reading about the 3 phases of alchemy, and I started to notice, to like kind of jump through the story just really quick, I started to notice my tattoo sleeve tells this story, but it was not intentional. So hindsight, I see it was this path I was walking, but even the black phase of alchemy is like the seeker with the lantern, walking through the dark forest, not really just stumbling around. That was absolutely my case. And you can kind of say I entered the white phase of spiritual alchemy, realizing that I was on that path. And that was a big part of my life. And then when I understood that with the tattoo, that's when things really started to solidify, and I went much deeper into the concept of spiritual alchemy.
Amazing. So you already had the path illustrated on your body, but without consciously realizing that that's what you were doing when you had the tattoo put on.
Yes.
So do you have any idea about how that actually happened?
I do not. It's something I share in these stories and on podcasts and with people. And I don't always give the weight to like really sit and acknowledge how, breaking your brain as it occurs to me, it can be to actually acknowledge that's what happened.
Wow. Yeah, because even having one small tattoo, it hurts, doesn't it? I've never had a tattoo, but you've got to decide to do it, and you've got to sit there and experience it. It's not like you wake up one morning and, oh, someone tattooed me in the night, I didn't feel a thing. That it's commitment to have a whole sleeve done.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the story too, because the first, part of the tattoo, there's a night, it's hard to see, for the listeners, I'll describe it. There's a knight standing confidently with the shield down and then holding the sword. And there's a dragon that's, 10 to 100 times bigger, big black dragon. And this was in my early 20s. I went to go get a tattoo, and it was actually going to be Saint Michael, a version that I drew of Saint Michael killing the demon underneath. But instead I drew Freddy Krueger, and I drew the guy as a knight. And this was my declaration. Hindsight, I know I was in the dark night of the soul during that period, just isolated and a lot of negative thoughts. And it felt like a monster in my head stealing presence and like so much for myself out of life and being able to connect with others and all these things. So I made a declaration. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get it tattooed on my sleeve. I'm going to declare it to the universe. I'm going to win this battle. Now, turns out if you try to battle negative thoughts, you only make them more powerful. But I finally got the courage, and I went to the tattoo shop in Pasadena, and I showed him this drawing I was all proud of because I made it myself and made it a little bit unique. And he looks at it, and I said, I want to get it right in my forearm here. And he looks at my arm. He looks at it again. He's like, you know what? It's not going to look that good. Like the way his arm is up with the sword, because that's what the St. Michael depiction is. He said it's going to be curved. It's going to look weird. Like, actually, it'll look so bad, I won't even put my name on it. So I was like, okay, just mustered up the courage to go get this tattooed on my skin. And I got denied. So I went back home and I spent some time, and then I meditated on it. And this vision came up of what I had today. And I didn't understand it fully, but it was this knight confidently holding his sword, shield on the ground. And then once again, instead of Freddy Krueger, it was a massive black dragon. And that was the first part of my tattoo sleeve. And then shortly after that, mid-20s, I finally got my pilot's license, which is the inside here. There's a big wing, and it just doesn't have the crest in the middle. It just has the wings, just by how it happened to turn out, going to that tattoo artist. And that was because the Gilberts were crop dusters. So pretty much every man, even on my mom's side, actually, every man had their pilot's license. So I got mine at that age. It was just an ode to the family. And then after that, I wanted to get a tattoo of a girl slowly dying. And it was just an ode to mortality. Like to just enjoy this life fully. And how it unfolded is when I got to the tattoo shop, we started to look at inspiration. And then the best inspiration was Dia de los Muertos. So that's what I ended up getting tattooed. And you can see here for the listeners, it's a woman as the Dia de los Muertos, kind of still looking like she's turning into the skull, looking up to the sky. She has red roses on top. There's a white rose below. And then at the time, we just asked somebody in the tattoo shop to take a picture of her holding her hand, holding her hair to use as a model. And we did that, and this area was blank. And for the listeners, there's a red ruby, aka, to give it away, the Philosopher's Stone. So that wasn't there, and I was always just going to fill it in black. And I'm sitting in my office right here, reading The Idiot's Guide to Alchemy. It starts talking about the 3 phases of alchemy, and even spiritual alchemy. And the first phase is the black phase, and it's represented by a black dragon. And this is when we get to know the unconscious forces within nature and within ourself, right? So the unconscious parts of ourself that also live, there's the unconscious force of chaos that also lives in the universe. You could think of Mother Nature that we can't control. So what can you do? It's the same with negative thoughts, right? Coming from the unconscious. All you could do is stand up confidently and either, choose when it comes to the thoughts to make it personal. You either choose to let them in or say no and confidently let them go. And then the white phase is represented by a white rose. And that's when you get to know your highest essence. This is the awakening moment. This is when you start to connect with a higher power or get a vision of your higher self or what's possible for you. And then the red phase is represented by red rose. And that's when it comes to spiritual alchemy, the symbolism of the inner king and inner queen, the inner masculine and inner feminine come together, and they actually die They're actually being purified. So it's really just burning down the ego and opening up the heart, and those two becoming one. And that gives birth to the Philosopher's Stone, or the Philosopher's Child. So I was sitting there reading that, and once it all clicked, it was just, what the heck? And looked, and like I said, there was this perfect little spot to put a Philosopher's Stone that was blank. And I knew, and I went back to the tattoo artist that did the Dia de los Muertos, and he's like, I don't even do color anymore. It was that long. But he did it for me. He finished the tattoo for me. So that's how I've really gotten to know spiritual alchemy.
How amazing. So it kind of crept up on you, but you were involved with it all the way along. So why were you reading the book about alchemy in the first place?
Yeah, I've always been into all the things from mental well-being, physical well-being, emotional well-being, spiritual well-being. And at the time, that was a little bit after I just closed the store, meditation supply store. So it was something I've heard about alchemy and learned a little bit, but did not know the depths of what alchemy really is. And it's funny because don't judge a book by its cover. Some of those idiots' guides are like, oh, but this one was actually written really well and like really clearly. And it was just this beautiful moment of like unfolding, right? Like I have like the vision of like the tree bearing fruit of like, oh yeah, this is my fruit to eat for this life.
Wow. So let's say I or somebody was curious about, well, where am I in those three phases? How might somebody start to look into, questioning themselves and asking and discovering where they are on that path?
Yeah. So making it really personal, the first phase, the black phase of alchemy. In the book, I use the metaphor of climbing a peak, a mountain. And this is when you're lost in the forest, the dark forest. And this can be a dark night of the soul. So this could be a catalyst of something comes and happens in your life that sends you potentially into a deep depression, or maybe you like lost a loved one, right? Or something happens basically that it's like the tower card in tarot that burns down what you think is true. So it's this process of the universe sends the fire, but it's not like fire that we typically think of. It's like divine fire here to burn away, you could say, illusion or just things that aren't true. And often when it comes to personal transformation, that's your belief systems. So this is where you're going through life and maybe you thought life was all about, I don't know, I guess the stereotypical, in the US, making money and having the best job and buying lots of cars, right? And then something happens. I could speak for myself when I lost my dad at the age of 11. Like, I realized that money was just this made up thing. And then I would give any amount of money just to hug my dad again. So like things like meals with loved ones is actually some of the greatest gold there is. So you have a moment like that that really shakes up things. And then this is when you start to get to know your own beliefs. You're like, oh, wow, I have limited beliefs. I've been showing up this way in life, just totally unconscious to why I've been doing that. So this is the real self-discovery process, right? You start to have some healing moment. Maybe you did a breathwork journey and had something come up and you're like, whoa, there's this whole other side of I experienced something and I don't understand. So you start jumping into these different things and learning about yourself and learning about your limited beliefs and how your mind operates and everything else. And then from there, you start to enter the white phase. And the white phase is like the light at the end of the tunnel. So this is when you're feeling lost for a while. You're starting to get to know your limited beliefs and why, like how you show up, the way that you show up, your behavior adaptations and everything else. And then the white phase is when you really start to have a moment. It's like climbing up the peak and getting above the tree line and like seeing life for what it is. And then as you keep climbing, eventually you'll get above the clouds. And that's when I use the metaphor of like the rays of the divine, like you'll feel that hit you. So this could be a moment of awakening. This could be a moment of awakening to the depths of who you truly are. Or maybe this is awakening to, if you're you thought your life was about making lots of money and just having all the fancy cars. And then you realize, oh no, there's this other path that actually lights me up, my passion, like my purpose. And I could see that clearly now. And it's often, a glimpse, a nice taste. And that's when you're like, okay, I'm starting to feel settled. There's this new world I'm entering where I feel maybe, if I had an awakening moment, I feel connected to all things, or I can understand there's a higher power and I could surrender and relax a little bit more. It's not just all this ego and everything I see in the physical world. Like I could relax. There's a bigger power underneath. Or you have that passion or purpose, and you're like, that's what I'm here to do. Like, okay, I know what I'm here to do. Beautiful. Well, then after that awakening moment, it's about coming down the mountain. And coming down the mountain is another way of saying integrating that into ordinary life. So then the red phase is the oscillation phase. This is where if you're in a big personal transformation, you're like, there's this new potential of this job I see myself doing and I'm here to do. And let's say you're changing careers. Well, the red phase is when you're walking between both worlds and you're integrating along the way, right? So this is where you have to, everybody knows if they started their own business, you got some years typically, unless you've had a lot of experience in the past that built up, right? So you got some years to put in and like learn the kinks and develop your skills and like till you fully become that glimpse that you saw. And the same for spiritual alchemy. The white phase is like when you really start to receive like spirit, and then the red phase is the culmination, the fermentation, and like then purification through distillation, as you finally walk the path and then fully feel like you could be grounded in this world, but not necessarily be of this world.
Yeah. Beautifully explained. Thank you. Yeah. So I listening to that, I can tune into different times in my life when I could have identified with each of those three. Do you feel as well that people kind of cycle back through them in different ways through their life? Could you say something about that?
Absolutely. This is a pattern of transformation that's micro and macro. So, from like a bigger perspective, yes, you're walking through these 7 phases is like what the typical alchemists agreed upon. But I always love debate on notes and like specifics. So yes, bigger part of life, like that's the bigger pattern, but this pattern is microscopic. So it could be, a moment or a month, and macro. You could even say lifetimes potentially. But it is this, I consider it like a spiral, right? So there's just like this spiral and you go higher and higher and higher. And there's, in my opinion, a spiral into the depths of your own being simultaneously. So it's not like there's ever an end destination. You just hit a new level, and like it's the first one though is always the biggest one, because that's when your reality gets shattered if you're having a spiritual awakening, right? This whole life that you thought was no longer is, and you're like, what the hell do I do now? But if you keep walking the path, it will all make sense.
Yeah, lovely. So it's a journey of journeys in a way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That keeps on journeying.
Yeah, lovely. So there you were reading this book and it really hit you and you realized it was already on your arm. You were already on this journey. And here you are now talking about it really clearly and beautifully. I can listening to you, I can tell that you've talked to a lot of people about this and develop ways of explaining it that can be easily understood, So how did you kind of transition from the guy who's looking at this book, having his mind blown, to the guy who now has worked with many people and has written the book and all the things you're doing now?
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful question. And it's been part of my own alchemical journey. So, some of my lead in life was when my parents divorced when I was young, and no fault of their own. It just gave me my behavior adaptation, aka limited beliefs, of I'm powerless and I'm voiceless. So you could see, and then also when my dad died, that was another major catalyst for myself. I know that I asked consciously what makes life worth living, but unconsciously I was seeking answers to why is life so painful. And after reading that book, my design background, plus always being into, peak performance and like spiritual well-being, overlap in a lot of areas when it comes to modalities. So it's like, oh, I've been exploring all these modalities most of my life. I have this creative designer background, so I love connecting dots. So then after that book, it was like, wait, what if I created something where we take the traumas, the limited beliefs, the lead, I started calling it, and turn that into gold or soul gold in this case. And I use my design brain, and when I get obsessed about a topic, I jump in deep. So that's what I did. And a big catalyst was applying that to myself. And then simultaneously, I came up with an experience to take other people through it. And it was funny because the first time I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. And then hindsight, it was like, this is the pattern to transmutation. So if you follow the pattern, it's absolutely going to work. So it was like by putting in those reps, and this was 2021 when 4 years ago. So not crazy amount of time. But if you saw me try to give a talk 2 or 3 years before that, I'd be sweating. I'd be, very stoic. I'd be unsure what I'm going to say. So it's been this process for myself, right? Like one of those core limiting beliefs of being voiceless, of stepping into that, of getting in a lot of reps, and like continuing on the journey. And then over time, like it just gets easier and easier. So it's a great opportunity, right? And sometimes I get busy and work with Novus Global, and I'm not thinking about how wild it is. Like you started off the episode of my tattoo sleeve. So it is like, it's my opportunity in this life to share my gold by stepping into the voice more and more. So we all got those opportunities within us. And if we don't jump into our journeys, then it's like this lead weighing us down versus this gold that's just waiting to be alchemized by jumping into that journey, or you could say portal, or whatever it is.
Yeah. And do you feel yourself called to switch more towards working with the Golden Life as a kind of and letting go of the work with Novus Global? Do you feel like there's a shift like that coming up, or do you feel like the balance of the two actually really works for now and for the future?
That's the path I've been walking for so long. They felt like, because I've always been into peak performance, and then found out spiritual alchemy is such a big part of my path. And they felt like these two different worlds. The longest time I couldn't understand, like, is it this one or that one or this or that? And really this path forward is like, what does it look like to just be one and just be? And so I don't have the answer to the specifics, because it's like, at this point, I can trust whatever unfolds is for like the deeper, like my intention is win for everybody, win for myself, win for others, win for the collective. So I now, if there's moments, of course, where it's hard to trust, but at the end of the day, I can still trust the path. With now, when I look back and see how my life's unfolded, it's like, come on. Because there's been other little things like stickers and stuff that I've made that I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but then they make sense later. So the more I remind myself of my journey, the more it's like, just bringing this, now I can call it soul aligned performance.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. Because that question just kind of came up in my mind, and it was very interesting the way you answered it, that you see them as one. You're seeing your life as one. You're not seeing it as an either or situation. So it'd be interesting to see how your offerings evolve over time, won't it? Because you've got this lovely Golden Life set of offerings with the book involved, and you've got the work you're doing with Novus Global as well. But it sounds like that the two are informing each other in some way as you go forward.
Yeah. And the work at Novus Global, we talk about growing in the goal line and the soul line. So I was like, oh, that's genius. Like, okay, there is a path of bringing this together. And if people ask me what I do, I have the fun answer. And if they say yes to the fun answer, I say I help people turn their inner and outer lead into gold, right? Their inner lead of the pain or trauma or whatever, and then the outer lead of that vision so big it's heavy, and bringing that in. So I don't know if Novus will be the thing that I always do, but I'm still gonna work on, living as this one thing, because I know it's hard, and this goes for, I'm sure other people can relate when you start to, I have this deeper calling to help raise collective consciousness or heal or help planet heal, and you make that leap, and you do feel like you're in two different worlds, at least in my own experience and part of the journey, that I've uncovered. So it's at the end of the day, how do you just become you and serve in any capacity?
Yeah.
And I'll share that as you go through the alchemical journey, same with the process of transmutation with the ancient alchemists, like there was a secret eighth step. And the secret eighth step is like the symbol of affinity, that you come back. There's no, ascending and disappearing into some other realm. It's you come back to earth, or just come back embodied whole, and you become a light for others, and you just walk the path of service with an open heart.
I felt that was a very, very potent aspect of the journey. I felt when I was reading that section, I remember I felt like there was a sort of a settling in my body, like, real life, but different. That kind of feeling of, yes, it's real life, but it's not the same as it was before the journey.
Yeah.
I very much felt that I was taken on a journey. I was just saying to you before we started recording, wasn't I? The way you've written the book feels like I'm being invited on a journey with you, as opposed to being schooled by you, as in the way that the Americans use the term. I don't know how, that sort of sense of, I know the answer, you don't, so listen up, which is just, I think everyone's fed up with that. So I was very impressed by the fact you didn't have that coming into the book. And I love what you said to me as well about it's an ongoing journey, so you're not actually taking credit for the wisdom, which I thought was beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. This is the pattern of transmutation. And then I just added on the hero's journey, which is, a journey we've all kind of collectively uncovered over time. We can give kudos to Campbell and like the other people that led to his awareness of that. But it's also to acknowledge when you walk the spiritual path, you start to realize we're all divine beings in human form. So we love to put a hierarchy on things, right? So we're all one in essence. And it's just, yeah, this is the pattern of getting to that path. And I also wrote this as a gift to people that I was taking people through this 2.5 day intense, journey experience. So that's why that's exactly what it was. It's let's walk this path together. And then when you come back home, we're on the same level of awareness, right? And now we get to help each other with our unique gifts and our unique music and like make this life more beautiful and amazing for all.
Amazing. What was it like writing the book?
That was an interesting experience where, like I said, like it was stuff coming through too, right? So some of that, like all the talking points were moments in the journey that I would share with people. I'd make sure to share when I did the one-to-one experience. But then there was ways that came through, like when the hero's at the top of the mountain and talking about the the realization that he's one with the cosmos and it's all inside. And the part that like tripped me up was like the I am, and there's other moments of that once again I can't take credit for. Like that came through me, and I will often go back and reread parts of the book to help remind me this year for myself has been the year of the dragon, and not in a Chinese horoscope type of way, as in I've been getting to know all my deepest fears face to face. So I'm like, also the moon has been coming up recently, so it's like, okay, I'm starting to enter the next phase. But it's a good reminder for myself to come back to. And I've had a mentor tell me that, yeah, this book is something that you will continuously come back to, and it's part of leading you where you're going, as well as something to share now.
Beautiful. I really resonate with that in my own work. Every time I'm working with people, I'm always taken back to recognizing my own place on the path. We're all on the path together and we're all learning together. regardless of where we thought we might have been before we walked into the room or before we started whatever it is we're doing together. And that's a beautiful thing, I think.
It is. And I like to think about, there's 75 trillion, maybe it's 50 trillion cells that make up the human body. And we like to think, I've been in this, I've like identified as like the lone wolf, feeling isolated and it's all up to me and just like myself. And then you realize like we're all cells of the human collective, right? We won't be able to survive without each other. So we absolutely are like a chain, grabbing each other is on the sides, like a chain link and pulling each other up. And that's how we help all of humanity.
Yeah. Amazing. Let's just remind people where they can find your book and everything that goes with Golden Life, which is goldenlife.com, which is just beautifully put together and really explains how people can engage with some of this. And I do think it's a really lovely way of engaging with it and very different, very individual. It doesn't come across as sort of woo-woo or, you've got to float around in purple gauze gowns and, with moons and stars on your clothes and stuff like that. Yeah. It's got a nice sort of solid feel to it, which I think is refreshing. We need that energy in this world, just like we need the other energy as well. So I like that. I think it's great. So
with you. That alchemists are kind of in the pinpoint of the cross and the centered, very practical and like, what are the things you got to do in physical life, and then very spiritual. They'll go to the depths of the spiritualness on a Saturday and be ready to go to work on Monday kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Which is great. Potent. It's very potent. So I've got a question for you, which is really about obviously, the things are interesting at the moment in the world. I think we can agree that there's all sorts of things going on, and we've all got our own ideas about what's going on and what should be going on and what shouldn't be going on, and and there's a lot of people who are trying to help things be better in different ways. Some of those people like to tune into the show, and so some of them are going to be listening to this conversation and kind of thinking about what you're talking about and thinking about, how they might bring that into their lives. If you think about those people who are out there trying to be part of the solution, some of them are leaders, some of them are parents, some of them are, it could be anything, but they're actively trying to be part of the solution, trying to help other people, trying to help lead people in the positive way. Is there something you'd like to say particularly to those sorts of people?
Yeah. I like to share lately with the craziness of reminding people, first of all, as a collective, like, we have the power now to type something into a keyboard and now that can, make up a plan and then have a robot go do it. So first of all, just playfully, I like to be like, hey, collective humanity, we did it. We won. We now can control external reality by moving our fingers or speaking. We can just speak, actually. I can upgrade my story now. We can just speak into the computer and a robot will go create it. Like this has been our goal our whole time, to master external reality. So this is the greatest opportunity now when it comes to the craziness of the world and seeing everything. We start to realize that the only way to make change now is to understand, to see the mirror in front of you. And then as you walk this path, eventually you're going to realize there's a mirror behind you simultaneously. And then that's when you're like, you can really settle in. And I think it's just all of our collective stuff that is getting brought to the surface for us to look at in the mirror. And eventually more people are going to understand there's a mirror behind us. And then for all those people who are leaders or parents or like, just getting drained by the collective, chaos, black phase of alchemy. It's always darkest before dawn. Remember that there's a tiny little elder within you that's always beating, and it's never stopped beating your entire life. So we like to figure things out in the head. And this is something I'm still working on. Just even now, it's like, do you want to be I'm getting sidetracked. Basically, going from the head to the heart. So it's like the heart cannot lead you somewhere that's not for the benefit of the collective or others. So it's by listening and trusting the guidance of your heart. And like from that place, it might not make sense all the time, but it's leading you somewhere that's ultimately going to help, because there's a lot of things that are much bigger than our awareness, our brains, actually, our minds can make out, right? We have all these stories about how we think things should be. And as you wake up and start to acknowledge bigger, capital R reality, then it's like, okay, the heart cannot mess up. And it's only my own perspective that we're all made of the divine energy of creation, which is just a fancy word for love. So the more that you come from that place, you're assisting the cosmos, the evolution of the world, by like the tides, the energy like flowing and being part of that river, instead of just getting stuck in the mind.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And that reminded me of, I really loved the way you brought in the heart in the book. That when you brought that in, I was like, oh my God, he's brought that in there. Having done all this other stuff and then brings in the heart. Whereas a lot of modalities start with the heart and then do some other things. But the way you did it, by the time the heart comes in, a lot of ground has been covered. And so that's a very, very interesting and potent. I think the listeners would have picked up. I think they ought to read the book, because it really does. And the way it brings in the heart in that way is just lovely. Loved it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And just to like quickly touch on that, that's part of, you have some reality shattering moment or your belief systems get burned down. And there's often really strong emotions. So there was a moment actually in my story, the idea of Soul Gold came about because I did my first breathwork journey. And if you haven't done extended breath work, not like, Wim Hof, but breath work for 40 minutes to an hour. So this could be holotropic, this could be somatic breath work. I just add on breathwork journey. And I was about halfway and there was music going in a room of like 40 of us. It was like a big group and helpers walking around. And I was like, this is all right. Like, I'm not really getting anywhere. Then all of a sudden, one of the helpers, one of the biggest guys in the room, I only know it because a big ass man hand put it on mine. And it sent me straight to the night I lost my father. And I thought I kind of dealt with the grief and stuff. Turns out I did not. I just pushed that away. And it was funny. I was cracked open, tears streaming down my face. I walk out of that room and they had to switch rooms because there was two going back to back. It was part of like a retreat. And my buddy saw me. He was like, how was it? And he just looked me at the eyes and he saw everything. He's like, oh. So I went back that night and processed, and I grew up on a walnut farm, and I had this visual of like a walnut got cracked open, right? Like all those emotions got pushed away and it got cracked open and the energy was able to release. And I gave myself months of like some space to feel those feelings. And then it was shortly after that of like, what did I learn from this? And then the intuition was like soul gold, right? Like that's how you collect your soul gold. And that's just the reminder that if you don't go through that process of releasing all the weight, all the lead that's on your heart, like it's going to be hard to really get to the heart. So it's part of the path of like letting the heart shine fully and unlocking the chains that we all naturally put around our heart, because that's just what society says to do.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Yeah. So, David, I could quite happily carry on talking to you for hours, because it's just so fascinating and I love this work you're doing. But we don't have time for that. So we've talked about quite a lot today. Has there been a favorite part of our conversation for you today?
I just loved how you picked up on some of the things I'm going through in the current moment, right? Juggling, creating two worlds in one, and acknowledging the biggest dragons of fear in my life. And I just really enjoyed this conversation, as well as letting people know that, this is a crazy time to be alive, and it's also the best time. And I believe it does get darkest before dawn, and I think there's a dawn coming. So the more that we can all step into this path and push each other to take the leap into the unknown that often will come up a lot, the more beauty that will unfold from that.
Amazing. Amen to that.
Yeah.
So final question then, and some guests like to do this. Would you like to leave the listeners with some sort of question for them to take away and contemplate and reflect on that will help them connect more fully with what we've been talking about today?
Ooh. The first one that pops up right away is like, who are you really? And then I'll ask my own spin of like, what soul gold is just waiting for you to uncover it?
Yeah. I love that. Who are you really? And what soul gold is just waiting for you to uncover it?
No, I'll give a little hint. The gold you seek is already inside you.
Thank you so much. David, this has been absolutely delightful. I'm going to wind up in a moment, but before I do that, is there anything else that you would kick yourself if you don't share it with the listeners before we finish?
No, I feel complete today. We can, like you said, we can go all different routes for hours and hours and hours, but this journey feels complete today. So thank you for being a great guide for this talk.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for watching and listening. If you're watching this on a video channel, please do put comments below, because people love it when people put comments, and you can have a little chat to sort of play around with some of the ideas. And do tell your friends, because we are giving this information out to everybody who chooses to hear it. And it's beautiful, potent, golden information. So thanks again. And thanks very much, David, for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. It really helps if you give a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, a review, and share with your friends. If you're looking for transformational coaching or an intensive transformational weekend workshop experience, I can help with that. You can actually help the show by making a donation. Until next time, take care.